Hi, I'm Erin from Cottage Designs by Erin, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a dress for the Little Miss Revlon doll. The pattern we will be using is by Simplicity. It is a reissue of the original. It is 3522, and we will be making dress A down here in the middle. So apparently these dresses are very hard to find, and I can see why, because they're kind of challenging to make. They have a lot of darts. So I'm going to show you the cheater's method of how to make these dresses without the darts using some different techniques. So I'm going to move the camera to my hands now and we'll get busy. Okay, so I've cut out the pieces, and for the bodice you're going to have the front and then you're going to have two backs. So we're going to sew these as you would any doll bodice by placing the shoulder piece on the front. So we match the shoulder pieces. And pin it, and then just do the same thing with the other side. I like to use cotton because it's the easiest fabric to work with. And then once you master these, then you can launch all out, move on into taffeta, silk, any other fabric that might slide, polyester. Okay, so we're ready to sew the shoulders. I'm sorry I look like such a wreck today. It's such a beautiful day. I went for a drive with the top off the Jeep, so I look a little worse for the wear, but I'm a happy me. I enjoyed being outside in the garden and also for the drive. Okay, so if you notice, our bodice pieces will now look like this. If you were going to sew baby rickrack or any kind of trim on the front, now is the time you would do that, and then you would catch it in the seam allowance at the top here. So the next step would be to make the darts at the waist, at the back, and then fold over the sleeves and hem that. Okay, that is much harder than the way I'm going to show you. So I have a duplicate of what we just did with the shoulder sewn to the front. We're going to put this face down on the piece we just made. The seam should be pressed open, or I'm just finger pressing it on the back, and I'm going to pin it. Same thing on the other side. Now, we're going to sew up the back and around the neck and down the other side using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. These pieces are rather small, but they're not as small as what I'm used to working with because I make a lot of Jenny doll clothes, and the Jenny doll pieces are really tiny. So this feels a little bit bigger than that. Okay, after we sew up the back and around the neck, we are now going to sew this a seam allowance across the sleeves, but you're going to leave the bottom free. I apologize for my light, my overhead light. I think the bulb's getting ready to go out. I do have a trash can down here to me to the right, if you're wondering why I keep throwing things on the floor. Okay, so now you want to inspect the bodice and make sure that everything is caught in the seam allowance on both sides. So then I'm going to take my little bitty scissors and I'm going to snip the neckline so that when we flip it inside out here in a few minutes, it will hopefully roll under in a neat and tiny manner. Okay, now, one trick on dealing with dresses this size, take the great big seam allowance on the back and cut that down real close to the edge. Excuse me, real close to the edge of the seam. And that way then when you flip it inside out, that'll keep it from being so bulky. Okay, now we're going to flip it inside out, and remember, we kept the bottom free, so don't be concerned when there's a hole in the bottom. Okay, so we're going to take the pins out. And we are gently going to flip this. Pull that side through and then go over and pull the other side through. Sorry, my allergies I think are kicking up here. Okay, so now we have our cute little top. Now's the time if you wanted to sew lace on the sleeves, you could do that. Or if you wanted to trim them out with rickrack, you could do that. I'm not going to do either of those things. I'll make sure you poke the back through. Very nice. Okay, so here is our bodice. You're now going to take this, and like you do with Jenny dresses, you're going to fold it down, and that makes our armhole. Notice that the square matches with the square and the divots match with the divots. So we're going to pin that. And then fold the other side down. Match it up to the best of your ability. It doesn't have to be perfect. The main thing is that this part up here has to match because that's going to be the sleeve. Okay, so it's already smaller because we lined it. Now, the next trick is we are going to cut in from here to here. We're going to follow the curve. And that's going to taper the sides in so that we don't have an excessive amount of fabric under the arms, which is where the waist dart would have been. I hate making darts. And for one thing, I think it's difficult to get them even. I hate it when they pucker. It takes too much time, effort, energy, so this method works. Another way to make this even tighter, which I didn't do it today, but I have used that method before, is you can cut the bodice up the center, on the center crease, and then you can sew it back together. And that 1/4 inch of cutting it apart, sewing it back will make it much smaller. Okay, so if you notice, I've cut that in very, very far here, just as a diagonal. All right, now I'm going to take my big scissors and I'm going to cut the bulk of that off so that when we flip it, we don't have a big, yucky, bulky seam. we're just going to have a cap sleeve, pretty little blouse. Okay, and that's what we've got. Our neckline is in. There's no holes. Everything's fine. Okay, so let me get our Revlon doll. Here is my pretty little girl. Okay, she's currently wearing an evening outfit. She came in this. And it's a mommy made dress. It's not a tagged outfit. So I'm going to take her out of that. She also has her original earrings. Her shoes have been glued on by her previous owner. So her shoes don't come off. So if it looks strange that I'm undressing her and the shoes are staying on her feet, that is why. She's got the twist and turn waist. She's got the red little fingernails and toenails. I think she's marvelous. I love her. Okay, so I'm going to put her on our stand. And we are going to try this little blouse on for size. Okay, so if you notice, it's nice and tight. And then when we pull it across the back where the snaps will be, it's a perfect fit. Okay, and we did not make a single dart in the whole thing. I got a rude comment the other day in a group. A lady said, "Oh my, nobody makes darts anymore. So what did you do? You just had to put a ribbon at the waist and that's how you got the look?" You know, very condescending, very rude. Listen, there's more than one way to do things. Yes, the darts make it look more authentic because that's how dresses were made, but it is not the only way to do something. Okay, so now I'm going to take the yellow bobbin out and I'm going to put in red because, where'd my red bobbin go is the question. I am going to sew on some red baby rickrack, and so I have to change out my thread for that. Now, here's another time-saving method. Some people hem it under, and then they put the rickrack just above the hemline. You could do that, but you're making extra work for yourself because you're making a two-step process. Okay, do it all at once. Hem under the skirt, pin it, and then when you go sew the rickrack on, you are hemming it. Okay, so you're not hemming it twice. Okay, so we're going to thread up our handy dandy machine. Get our bobbin action going in here. I hate changing out thread for these. That's another thing, you know. Okay, first off, you got to cut it out, which I saved time doing that before the video. Then you have to sew all the trims on, and that takes a lot of time. If you had to make all the darts, that takes a lot of time. So I tried to make this video as in a time-efficient manner here, showing you how to do this. All right, so I have already folded under the hem and I've pressed it. So to sew on little bitty trim, where my hem is at, I'm going to run this rickrack right down the center of the hem. And I will say this takes a little practice. When I first started sewing, I didn't always get it straight. It didn't always match up, but I'm getting better at it after all the dresses I've made. Okay, so you want to get it nice and firm underneath your presser foot. You're going to hold on to the thread in the back because you're going to pull this as you go through. Once you get it going, you can turn loose of it in the back. You know, and as you go along here, align it, push it over a little bit with your fingernail so that it's always in the same spot. I'm wanting it right down the center of the hem that I folded under, and I can feel it underneath my fabric. These little dresses are so darling. They have a huge bouffant skirt on them, which gives us that great big 1950s party dress look. Oh, it's just adorable. Adorable. Now, I bought a petticoat on Etsy for my Revlon, and I bought it from, I believe, Doll Secrets. That's typically who I buy my petticoats from. I hate making petticoats. So I just buy them on Etsy for my dolls. And that lady does a beautiful job. She uses a polyester satin typically. And then she sews on the tarlatan, which gives it that very stiff, ruffled look. And it's just way more effort energy than I would want to expand. And I'm so happy with hers, I'd just rather she do it. That way then I could sew the dresses and she can sew the petticoats. Okay, as you go along, you're going to take your pins out. I don't run over pins. I don't feel like I'm that good. There are seamstresses that do that, but I don't, because I don't want to tear up my machine. It's old and I won't find another one like it. Try to respect my machine as much as possible. I need it. Okay, so we're almost to the edge. And don't feel like you have to sew this on in one-hit wonder. You can stop and readjust it. You don't have to make it all across at once. We're not running a race. Okay. Every time I see Rick Rack, it reminds me of the Charlie Brown shirt. You know how he always had those that Rick Rack on the front of his shirt. Okay, so I'm going to fold that up. Now I'm going to switch back to the yellow thread we started with. I probably shouldn't have my windows open with the allergies I have, but I'm so in love with this time of year, and even though I don't breathe well with the windows open, I like that feeling of having fresh air come through the house. But I do not sleep with the windows open because I think that would be probably disastrous. Okay, so let me thread this. I notice my little Revlon doll has a little bit of green ear from her earrings. I guess I need to get some peroxide and try to clean that off. I haven't done that yet because I just like her just the way she is, green ear and all. Okay, so we're going to now take our edges of our skirt and put them together. And as you can see, our Rick Rack lines up. Got some loose strings here I need to cut off. So we're going to sew up the back of the skirt. We have to leave room for Dolly to get in. All right, now we have our hem on the back, which I normally do press, but I'm not going to because my iron is across the room. So I'm going to hold it down with my fingers, and we're going to sew that. I'm going to come towards myself with it. Then I'm going to stop, turn the fabric, cut straight across and go up the other side. Also, I cut the top of my dress out with pinking shears so that it doesn't unravel and get real stringy. Okay, so my dress has a real nice sharp crease in it where we cut it out on the fold. I'm going to put a pin in it so that we know that is our center. And now it's time to shear up the dress. To shear up the dress, I put it on the largest stitch I have, which is 5 on top, and then I do a 4.5 on bottom. Okay, I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to lightly remove a couple stitches so that I can shear it. All right, then we're going to pull on our thread and shear it all the way up to the center pin. We're going to go shear up each side. Now, when I first started sewing, I tried to shear the whole thing all the way across. Well, guess what happens when you do that? It doesn't gather evenly. So you're going to gather one side to the pin and then flip it around and gather the other side to the pin, and chances are it'll be a little more even because you're only doing half at a time. Okay, so now we have a great big round skirt, which is precious. I'm going to take her blouse off of her. Doll Secrets also has Little Miss Revlon nylon cute little girdles, panties, and little bra sets, which are darling too. All right, so I'm going to find the center of my blouse, match it up with my center pin, and then now we have to get all this. This is the hardest part, other than the darts. We have to get all this skirt on this little bitty 3.5 inch, or however many inches it is, this little blouse. It's not very big, I can tell you that. And you want to, it's going to stretch out as you pull it, so you need to make sure that you're keeping it real nice and tight all the way to the very end. Do not pin in the seam allowance where you'll be sewing. Make sure you pin down a little bit lower. And pull your pleats as you go here. Pull your fabric down so that your pleats are nice and straight, because that's how the gathers are going to be sewn in. All right, we're going to go around and around. Okay, so we get over here. Every little pleat has to have its own resting point on the skirt. If you double up, it's going to bunch, or worse, you're going to have holes. And we don't want either one of those things. So every little pleat has to have its own little spot in the sun. Okay, now notice, see how my skirt came apart there? We've got to pull it again and gather it some more to get it to fit. If it's too tight, you can always pull some out, but it's better to be too tight than too loose. Okay, now you want to make sure, go around and feel with your fingers and make sure that that bodice is adhered to the skirt, because if it's not, it's going to roll over. You're going to get it sewn crooked. How do I know this? Because I've done it many times. I've sewn it wrong many times. So make sure that it is firmly pinned to that skirt, because you've only got one shot to get it on there. Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to blow my nose. Okay, so my sewing machine has the piece that you can take off here, so when you're hemming, it's much easier. I love that about this, because some have that great big table that does not come off, and then you can't get around your little tiny pieces like this. Okay, so we're going to put the end under the presser foot, fill with your finger, and make sure that you can feel that bodice attached to the waist, and make sure it's not in there two or three times, like layered up. Okay, so we're going to go back to straight stitch 1, and we're going to start to sew this in place. As you go, you're going to roll the skirt. Keep your fingers inside the waistband at all times so that you can feel it and see what's going on. Because if you don't do that, you're going to have a bunched up mess. Trust me. My machine has a hard time with thick layers, so sometimes it makes weird noises. All right, now I got it all on there. It's all appears to be here just fine. So now I can cut off my basting strings that I used to shear the skirt. All right, so now what we need to do to make sure that it's good and in place, we are going to zigzag above the hem line, above the seam line, so that first off, we won't have any raw edges, and secondly, it'll hold all of our pleats in place. Okay, so I'm going to put it back under, and I'm going to put it on a zigzag stitch with 2. Okay, so ultimately you have now sewn the skirt on twice. So it should not come undone for any reason if you got it all caught. We're going to go around, take the pins out. Invariably, I forget a pin, and then I think I screwed the whole thing up, and then I'm like, oh, you didn't screw it up after all, it's just a pin. Okay, so now we're going to flip it. And we've got this beautiful, beautiful circle skirt with the big full skirt. Okay. All right, so now the trick is we have to put it on the doll. So we'll put our feet in. And then our arms. And then across the back, you're going to pull it and then put your pins in so you can kind of see where the notice our rickrack meets. We're going to put the pins in up here so we'll know where to put our snaps in a few minutes. Okay, so I don't have her petticoat on her obviously, but when I do, this is going to be huge and puffed out and glorious. Okay, so get on there, Dolly. Okay, so as you can see, let me get the camera back up here. Okay, so here is our little Miss Revlon. She needs panties and she needs her petticoat and a sash, and she's all ready to go. So what did we learn? We learned how to take a doll dress in without darts. It can be done, and you still get this beautiful look in half the time. So if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel for more videos in the future. Thank you. Bye.